Hello class. In this video we're going to begin our rendering here and I'm going to start by doing the siding and doing colors and just adding some elements to the house. Now for your own assignment I want you to choose the colors yourself, and you can choose colors as you see fit here, but I did want to point out this one thing since um, we have worked on a perspective like this, but in Photoshop. If you have your Photoshop drawing up, you can select the same colors. And this is a nice Photoshop trick that I want to show, even though we're talking mainly about Illustrator. I want to show you this. If you come into Photoshop and pull up your eyedropper, which is usually under here, if you go ahead and click, say, somewhere on your siding, you can see that it's pulled up the color right here. That is the color. And I could copy any of these numbers and use it in Illustrator, which uses the same sort of color picker thing. Or the nice easy thing is this little hashtag down here. That's called the hex code, and that's RGB value. The three RGBs combined into one. I don't want to get into everything, but it uses like the 16-bit system, and that's what the code is. So just take my word for it. You can select it and press Control C on your keyboard to copy and press cancel. And then what I can do is I can go over to Illustrator and I can go to my fill, which is this one right here. For me, it's set to the slash. And you can see I've got the same system over here, including the hashtag for the hex code. I can do Control V to paste it in, and you can see I can get that color going there. Now I might be, and you might be too, in our black and white. So I might just pick any old color at first. So it's hard to tell because my color was so light. And then I'm just going to do it again to make sure that I have it there. Now, the way I often work in Illustrator, not entirely, but very often, since I'm bringing in a CAD layer with all the lines, I don't need to draw line work in Illustrator. This is a fill color, the internal color, what I call the donut. That's the stroke color or the line. Since my lines are already there, pretty much for most of the assignment, I'm going to turn the line or the stroke off. So I'm going to pick the donut, hit the red slash, which means it's only going to have a fill color. Okay, so you want to do that, and then you want to come over to your layers. If you don't see any of the tools over here that I'm using, this is a heads up. You go to Windows and you can pull them up. So for example, Windows layers will pull your layers up. And then you're going to hit the new layer button, and you can call it siding. I'm going to call it siding 1 because I used 2 colors. And as I mentioned in the previous video, everything pretty much is going to be underneath the CAD layer. So I'm going to pull my siding down there. And I'm going to go to my favorite tool for basic drawing, which is really just the pen tool. And I'm going to zoom in, which is ALT on the keyboard and up on the scroll wheel, a lot like Photoshop. I'm going to do this section of siding right here. I'm going to start at the top left. I'm going to click, and I'm going to come over and click again. You can see that Illustrator knows lines, so it snaps, it knows endpoints, and I can get pretty close to these lines. If I mess up a little bit, perfectly fine. You can fix it later, or you might not even see the mistake. Now, as I click around, I have to click point by point, and you'll notice as I do so, it might be looking incorrect. Like look right here, I've got some of the color on top of what's going to be my trim for this window here, which I don't want to happen, but I'm drawing it correctly because it's always going to connect the first and last point. It's not going to draw it the way you think it's going to look like. But as I keep drawing, you can see it starts to define itself more correctly. So it's going to sort of sometimes look correct and incorrect. You just have to trust if you go around the shape you're trying to fill in, by the time you get to the end, it will look correct. And then when you go up to your starting point, see how there's a little circle next to my pen? That means I've closed the object, which usually I want to make sure I do if I'm running certain filters or some other things like that. So there we go. I've got this color here. It's a little, when I look at it in this Illustrator file, which is going to be a bit more graphic, I find it to be a bit gray. So why don't I come over and make it a little bit more blue than I had from Photoshop, which I think is perfectly fine. And this siding is going to be the same color, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same for here. I'm going to come around the window. Now, there is a trick where I don't have to go around the window, but I'm going to do that for now. So I have this siding here. I'm going to call that siding and lock the layer, although I'm going to come back to that layer here in a moment. But I'm going to do the other siding color as well while I'm in here. So I'm going to make a new layer, and call it siding 2. Again, I'm making a new layer because I want to make it a new color. And so as I go through and might adjust these things, it's very easy to adjust by layers. And so if I keep the same color per layer, it's going to help that process. If you want to, go to Photoshop, eyedropper, that new color, select it, copy the hex code, and come into Illustrator and paste the hex code, and you have your new color. Again, I might make it a little bit more blue given um, the differences in the graphic styles or the graphic quality of the work, but I'm going to come in here and do my second color. Again, choose your own colors, do what you think is going to work for you, and I often recommend, get a bunch of color on your drawing first. It always helps to edit the colors after you can see how it's all working together. Later in the semester, we will go over some color theory, but so we won't worry about that too much now. I think for this example, for the bay here, at least on this one, I'm just going to even go right over the windows, and you're going to see that's going to be partially for demonstration purposes. I could have went around the window, but you'll see it won't matter because how I'm going to control layers, it's going to give me an advantage there. So either way, it's fine. I've got my siding on here. Before I end the siding, I just want to show you a little trick. This is perfectly fine if you sort of end your siding like this, but again, sometimes you want a little more variation. The thing about Illustrator, it has such flat colors. Sometimes you could use that to your advantage, but sometimes you think the drawing just becomes too flat. And so there are some simple tricks you can do to prevent that. There's also complex ones, but I'm going to show you a simple one here. Now, so I'm going to unlock my siding layer, my siding 1 layer, just so I can select this object. And I'm going to do an effect. You'll notice there's Illustrator effects and Photoshop effects. Photoshop effects sort of work on pixels. I'm not going to talk about those today, or at least right now, but I'm going to run Illustrator effects that deal the geometry. I'm going to go to Stylize, and I'm going to go to Inner Glow, and I'm going to set my Inner Glow to white. Now, if you're going to set it to white, you can't use your mode of screen. I'm going to have to go to Normal. I'm just going to hit preview to see what this looks like. If you saw, there's a little bit of a glow along the edges. It's way too small. I didn't know what size it would come out to be. So let me try putting something like, I don't know, 0.5, half inch in here. There we go. Now see how it just has this light fade over top of it? Maybe that's a little big. Maybe it'll go a little smaller. So I'll try 0.3, see how that looks. I'll say that looks good. But now maybe it's too bright. It's still too much. We're going to take down the opacity even further, maybe 50% like that. Too light. I'm going to go 60. And when I really work, I do work back and forth, and I'm sort of quickly going through these settings, and you can choose your own settings, but it does take back and forth in setting it, because actually I think it's too small now. I'm going to go maybe 0.4 and go with that. Like, yeah, okay, that looks good. So I'll say okay, and I got this little inner glow to give some textural quality to that. You don't have to do it, but it's just a quick little trick you can use, and you can apply it to the other objects as well. Once I have it once, I can actually just apply inner glow. If it was the last setting I did, it'll do the exact same thing. So I can do that to that layer for that color, and I can unlock the siding 2 and do it for these as well. I can do them all at the same time. Now you can see I don't like the effect much on this dark blue, so I might actually just undo that with Control Z. If you don't have it in the undo settings, you can also go to your appearance tab. Again, if you don't have it, it's window appearances, and you can see everything that's applied to objects here, which is nice, a nice way to edit. So I'm going to go to inner glow and just delete it. That's another way I could do it. So I like that. I think that works. I would argue maybe this blue can be a little bit different. If you want to change your colors, you can start thinking about them now. Just select what you want. See, that's why it's easy, because I can do Control A to select everything. As long as the rest of my layers are locked, I know I'm getting what I want. It's very easy then just to go to your color and change your color and edit it to what you might prefer it instead. That's why I work everything on a different layer. So I think this video is long enough as the siding. The next few steps are going to be pretty similar to this, just applying color. Little tricks here or there might be slightly different, but follow along and we'll get this thing rendered up.